Go
Looks like
ahead,
we're live.
man. You set it up, knock it down, whatever you
Let
want
me,
to do, man.
all right, let me start out by introducing myself. I am Aaron Tomlinson, and this is the great.
I'm Derrick Day, and
And what are you drinking tonight, bud?
I am drinking Crevassier VSOP, top
Dude,
shelf, good shit.
you are living the life.
I actually am. I mean, I was telling you in the studio before we got started
Yeah,
that this has been a really trying week, but it's been a good week. Been a very productive week. We closed a couple of major deals, and so I'm really excited. But I earned every fucking dime this week, so that's why I'm drinking this.
good for you, man. I, on the other hand, am on the low budget, pre-made Jose Cuervo margarita.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, man.
How's the weather there?
It's been a little windy. The last couple of days we had rain earlier in the week, but the weather it's been warmer and humid. But today it's been kind of windy.
Yeah, it's been cold for us, and it's supposed to rain later. It's been windy, so kind of late in the year. They're supposed to get snow in the high ground, so a lot.
Wow,
Kind of late in the year
wow.
for it. All right, so we were talking off camera. I said I was listening to a guy on YouTube that is a sifu, a kung fu and master, and he was being interviewed, and someone asked him if the law of attraction was true or if it worked, and his response was basically no, unless he put two qualifiers in there. He said unless you're 100% yourself. He said that's the first thing I encourage my clients to do and my students to do is be 100% themselves. And then he said the second thing was unless you could really greatly raise your chi or your human energy.
Mm.
So that got me thinking on this topic of being 100% yourself. And I think since you're the martial artist in the group, I'm gonna bounce it back to you and get your thoughts on that.
Well, and when you told me this earlier, it actually sparked something. And I've been on this, like I said, I was telling you that Sunday on Forward Live, I talked about selfishness and why selfishness is not a bad thing because this is really looking after self first, right? And I thought about what you said, and I thought about this. I really believe in the law of attraction. I
Mm-hmm.
think that I live fully 65 to 70% of my life on the law of attraction. I
Yeah.
mean, and it works. I mean, here's the thing: like the people that you want, Aaron. It's like the reason you and I are together doing this is because of the law of attraction,
Right.
and nothing else. I mean,
Right.
literally, it was like there was something in your spirit that resonated with mine resonated with yours, and it attracted, and we came together in a synergistic way.
Yeah.
My home, my job, my car, my wife, my kids, all of these things is like something coming to me because I made a way for it.
Right.
Now, here's the catch. And your seafood that you listen to is absolutely right. The law of attraction is absolutely bullshit if you are not yourself. How can and think about this? How can something inauthentic attract anything else? Now hear me out on this. I'm going to say add something else here real quick. When I was a kid, I used to go down to the GM building in Midtown Detroit, and it was General Motors headquarters. And so they had this thing in the lobby. It was called the Futurama. And so they would put all of these future concept cars there, and all of us kids would just, whoa, whoa. What was funny about this, the majority of these cars were not cars at all. They were
Mm-hmm.
mock ups, they were models. Now, they attracted attention, but they didn't attract marketability. Because in order for something to attract marketability, somebody has to see it doing something. and when it's performing at its best, performing in its zen zone, performing in its why, performing in how it's designed, then that's when um like Tesla cars, when people show when Elon Musk showed a working prototype of the car and the investors were able to touch it, drive it, observe it in action, that was when the money started coming in. It wasn't when the design was presented, it wasn't when the mock-up was shown, it was when
Mm.
a fully functioning car
Mm-hmm.
was demonstrated. So watch this. When we are operating at our peak in our max efficiency, which your max efficiency can only be achieved in your best authentic self. So
Yep.
when that happens, things just start coming your way because that's matter of fact. I will say this, that you will operate more on the law of attraction by accident when you're authentic than if you strive at it when you're counterfeit.
Yep. Yeah. So we've talked about being your best authentic self, which I love. I love that way that's nuanced. And this is nuanced a little bit differently, at least in my mind, being 100% yourself. And there's a lot of components to that. So to kind of explain how I'm seeing it, I'm gonna turn to mythology and read a
Are you
myth.
going? Are you going to our favorite mythology?
Your favorite, your absolute favorite. And give you my own personal spin on the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden.
Mm.
And the Bible says that they were both naked and unashamed till they ate from that damn tree.
Mm.
Till they ate from that damn tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Fucking
And
tree.
then it says their eyes were opened, which is an interesting thing to look at. Their eyes were opened. Were they shut before? Their eyes were opened and they knew that they were naked. And it says they withdrew themselves. It's interesting in the Hebrew. It says they withdrew themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they covered themselves with fig leaves and aprons, right?
Yep.
And then the day of reckoning comes. God says, where, key phrase, where are you, Adam? And Adam answers and he says, I hid myself
Mm-hmm.
because I was naked and afraid. And he says, who told you you were naked? And then he says, he plays the old blame game, the woman you gave to be with me. And then the woman comes and says, that was the serpent.
Yeah.
And then right after that, they're exiled from paradise and they have to work by the sweat of their brow to make nature produce for them. So I think you can see where I'm going with this.
Yep.
The idea of being naked and unashamed, metaphorically speaking, like I don't believe in two naked vegans that talked to a snake and ate the wrong fruit that corrupted all of humanity for all time so Jesus could die on a cross. I reject that narrative completely. I'm embarrassed that I ever believed it. But metaphorically, mythically, 100% yourself, naked and not ashamed, right? Just open and in relationship. And then you eat at this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And now suddenly your perception changes. Your eyes are opened and you begin to find faults and flaws with yourself, being 100% self. Like they didn't mummify themselves.
No.
They just covered up certain parts.
Yeah.
Which means they withdrew a percent of themselves out of shame, out of guilt, out of people pleasing, whatever the case may be. And then from that place, so really, I mean, in the story, Adam condemns himself long before God does.
Yeah.
And so it's this whole idea of how subjective the knowledge of good and evil can be. On a macro scale, it's subjective in the sense that you conform to the family, community, society that you're in. And we know there have been societies down through the ages and even right now where something that's perceived as good by one community is perceived as evil by the other community.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the sort of macro subjection of that and that programming, but then you also have what I would call the micro uh, processing of this, where we
Mm-hmm.
judge ourselves throughout our life. Oh, that part of me is good, that part of me is not good, and we split down the middle, and we create this dualistic battle inside ourselves. Especially if we get into religion, then that highlights that dualistic battle and it just amps it up on steroids. And so you end up in this thing where you're covering yourself, right? You're covering parts of yourself. You're hedging a little bit, and we do most of that out of unresolved trauma and people
Mm-hmm.
pleasing, the need to please other people, as though somehow pleasing other people is more important than pleasing yourself. So that's my intro.
And you know what? I said this on Sunday, that why selfishness is not a bad thing. Now, here's the thing: that whenever you uh, amplify self at the expense of others, then that selfish nature becomes what we commonly call selfishness. In other words, we are exploiting others to elevate ourselves, right? Or we are putting others down in order to make ourselves look better. And but the thing is that we have to get past the whole naked and afraid thing, right?
Right.
And this is the thing that really kind of trips me out when I look at that passage. That nakedness is awareness. In other words, there was a barrier between me and understanding, and
Mm,
that barrier exposed something in me. And so what it exposed was a part of me that I didn't understand was there, but it's there. And this goes back to discussions that we've talked about, like light work and shadow work, right?
right.
In other words, you have to do this work. I always go back to my buddy Carl Forehand when I think of this. You gotta do the work. Gotta do the work.
Yep.
So you're doing this shadow work to understand this part of you that others don't see, or that you don't commonly recognize. And so that's what happened. In that, this is a whole metaphor for, I did something that caused a part of me to be exposed in a way that I was unhappy with, or that made me uncomfortable. Now, what happens then is that in order to cover this or compensate it, I have to do something to step out of authenticity. I
Right.
have to I have to put on a mask. So again, your metaphor about putting on the aprons, the fig leaves. It never says, we look at the artwork, Renaissance art, and the fig leaves are always covering the genitals, right? But it never says where these fig leaves actually were.
Right.
I mean, because these fig leaves could have been on the eyes, they could have been on the nose, they could have been on the mouth, right? There was something that was being covered. And and I don't think that, to be honest, that if we look at this in a literal sense, that it could not have been genitalia, because there was never anything discussed about sex, right? We don't hear about Adam knowing Eve until after they're expelled from the garden, right?
Right.
But we do know that they saw some things, they smelled some things, they touched some things, and they tasted some things. So what am I saying with all this is that a lot of times, um, and you did a really good teaching. I don't know if it was this Sunday or the last Sunday, where you were talking about the autonomic, subconscious part
Yeah, it
of
was
the
a
of
couple
the human.
Sundays ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So that that part, um, is hidden. We don't really look at that. It's like our subconscious makes us want to do things, or makes us it does things in an autonomic way that we don't think about. And so when this whole event happened, I believe that it exposed an autonomic part of themselves. And so now you say that's just like, let me give you an example, real world example. You're sitting in a meeting, and all of a sudden your stomach starts growling. Now you didn't tell your stomach to growl.
Right.
And it could be because you're hungry. It could be because something upset your stomach. But
Mhm.
your stomach begins to make noise. Now, the first thing that you do is say, what? Oh, sorry guys, excuse me. I didn't have breakfast, or I ate something that didn't agree with me. You begin to make excuses for it, and you try to find something to hide behind, right?
Yep.
And it may be that, okay, I'm lactose intolerant, or I may be fructose intolerant, or I may have problems with acidic foods or alkaline foods, any number of things. But instead of trying to say, well, this is just an autonomic part of me, we begin to cover up. We're trying to find a facade to hide behind. And so what happens then is that, um, you will develop a reputation of being unnecessarily apologetic.
Yep.
So now I'm constantly making, I'm trying to craft a reason or an excuse for why I am the way I am, instead of trying to educate others on this is me. And in order for you to accept and understand me, there are some things about me that you need to know. And so, when so all of this, I'm really digging this. And again, we need to actually coin this as a tagline. Learning in real time, growing in
I
real
know.
time, because
Growing
this
in
is
real
what's
time.
this. And as we're talking, as you're talking, and as I'm talking, as I'm processing this, I'm like, holy fuck. I'm like, whoa. So, but anyway, good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I've thought about, you challenged me a while back to like name my Sunday program, or come up with a name for some of the stuff I'm doing on YouTube and stuff. And growing in real time just won't leave me alone. Uh,
Hey, if that's what
it
works, man.
feels like what I'm doing, constantly. Um, then I think the question. So the biggest fear I think that we have to get over. First off, we have to quit judging ourselves. We have, like being 100% yourself means taking 100% ownership for yourself.
Mm, boom.
That's so important. And that's why religion could be so damaging, because I'm actually giving away control of myself. I'm giving away ownership. I'm giving myself to the Lord. I'm giving myself to the deity or whatever. The opposite of that is true. The devil made me do it. And so you got two things working there,
Well,
right?
your flesh is the devil's playground, Aaron.
Yeah.
Within your flesh dwells no good thing.
And when you're a little OCD like I was, and you've had childhood trauma like I did, that's just,
Oh my
oh my God,
God,
what a mind fuck, man. It's just
poor guy.
terrible. It's terrible, 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 terrible. But then the flip side is like taking 100% ownership for yourself and realizing, I'm accountable to myself for myself.
Yeah.
And that means I am responsible for everything I say, everything I do. People might be okay with that, but then also, I really pissed off a psychologist in religious trauma recovery group when I said this. But you're also responsible for what you think and what you feel. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have, you're responsible for what you think and what you feel. You're not necessarily the cause
Yeah.
of everything that you think and feel. So, sure, someone can hurt your feelings, someone can make you mad, someone can offend
But you
you.
are 100% responsible for how you react.
Yeah, you have to take ownership of that and responsibility for that, and consciously, use that. One of the things that happened to me when when my viewership and following began to whittle away on Facebook and mostly on Facebook. Uh, One of the things people were like, "You're so angry," and I was angry at the time. I had a lot to be angry about, and I refused to hide that part of myself, and partly because I was esteemed as a pastor and
Mhm.
all that stuff, and so I made my living hiding
Mm.
parts of myself because we don't let people be human. To be something as simple as just hiding a angry response to something as complex as hiding issues that are going on in your own family with your kids, because if you can't rule your own family well, Derrick,
Mm.
then you're put out of your
How can you rule
livelihood,
the
right?
people of God? Yeah.
Yeah. So and one of the things, even with sort of the new age love and light crowd, or even the shadow work crowd, was like, well, if you show anger, or you show these human depression, anxiety, you show these parts of yourself, then you haven't done your work, you haven't done your
Mm.
shadow work, you haven't, whatever the case may be, or you're not ascended enough. And to me, that's just another fairy tale. It's just dehumanizing, not allowing me to be human. So being 100% myself requires that I take responsibility for myself. So I would consciously put my anger out on Facebook on purpose,
Mhm.
because I wanted to, number one, break that pattern inside myself that worried about what other people thought about those sides of me. And number two, I wanted to model for people that could catch it, that this is part of the human experience that we have to deal with. So being responsible doesn't mean that you cause these things, but it does mean that you take responsibility for what's going on inside you,
Mhm.
and begin to address and deal with those things as you're able to do that.
I want to take something you said and nuance that a bit, right? Because I get this all the time. People say, like, they'll see my posts against religion, and they'll say, "Oh, why are you so angry?" And here's the thing, right? We are greater than the sum of our emotions, but the sum of our emotions speaks to our core being. So there is no one that has learned to suppress emotions. They might mask emotions, they might subdue emotions, but to actually, control them, to totally subordinate them, I don't think I don't think that it's either possible, or even if it were, could it be healthy? I don't think it could be. So when you put your anger out, you are expressing a part of your psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, you are being authentic. Because if you were to say, well, I don't have any anger, lottie dee, lottie dum, everything's beautiful, unicorns and rainbows, um, are you being your authentic self? Because
Right.
you're saying you're projecting to the world, I have no anger. Now, what I this is the part that I want to nuance, is that anger is an emotion.
Right.
It is an emotion. But being angry, I think being angry speaks to a state of being. Now, you can be momentarily angry, because that is the expression or manifestation of anger, right? But if you are an angry person, then that means that anger is the cornerstone emotion of your life.
Right.
And so every other emotion that you have, anger serves as the springboard into the pool of those emotions, right? But so when I tell people I'm not angry, I do have anger. I have anger about religion. I have anger about racism. I have anger about capitalism. I have anger about some things, but my anger is not the driving force behind what I say and do. My why is helping people understand the thought processes necessary to be a free moral agent. I mean, because you can't say that you're free until you say that you're a free moral agent. In other words, I understand that I have the capacity for both good and bad, but I choose the good. And I'm not choosing the bad. And matter of fact, I'm conscious of this to the point where I'm working toward keeping the bad in check, that I keep it compartmentalized. Now, does that make me inauthentic? No, it doesn't, because I'm aware of my ability to do this, my
Right.
capacity for this, but because I want to make sure that I am my best authentic self, that I'm taking the worst of me and set and putting it
Yep.
here and accentuating that which is good. So the whole thing is, when people come to you and say, and you can feel free to use this, by the way, you can use it, and anybody else that's watching, is that when you rail against systems, processes, ideologies, things like that, you are not. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're an angry person. Do not let anybody frame you that way. You may have anger toward those things, but you're not. This is not like, well, I'm now. Let me just say this. When it comes to religion, my mission in life is to try to destroy religion. I'd like to see it go away, and we usher in a golden age of reason. Well, that may be a little bit quixotic, but that's where I am, right? But the whole thing is that I'm trying to subvert this through logic and reason, and not by anger. I'm not out there like just lobbing bombs. I'm actually very strategic about how I'm doing this. So it's not an angry response. There is anger in it. I have to own that in order to
Mhm.
be authentic, but
Mhm.
I'm not angry. So that
Right.
was yeah, that I just wanted
Yeah.
to throw that out there.
Yeah. And I think so. One of the main differences here in regards to what you're saying and what we're talking about is you're doing that completely from a conscious choice. So the what we call the locus of control in psychology, the location
Mm,
of power is still within you. You know, you've got these parts that you might call the capacity to do evil, and you're making the choice to keep that in check out of a self-awareness and self-ownership, right? So that's being 100% yourself. That's the first thing I would say. Now that's different. That's totally different than editing yourself out of fear of other people,
yes.
or fear of judgment day, or whatever it is that we're afraid of that causes us to hide parts of ourselves,
Now
really from
take
ourselves
take take
and
that
from other people.
drill into that a little bit. I want you to unpack that a little bit about editing yourself, because I think I understand where you're going, but I want everybody that's watching to catch this, because this is what you're about to hear, folks, is life changing. So buckle up.
Yeah, so it's like when I was going out on Facebook and venting my anger, that was very much a conscious choice. It was not an automatic reactionary response. A lot of
Mhm.
people, their anger is an automatic reactionary response, right? Something happens and they just blow up, they lose their temper, whatever the case may be. I'm like sitting on it and I'm like, I'm going to put this out there because I want to put this out there. And I understand the ramifications and how that may reflect poorly on me and that kind of thing. So that's 100% choice, right? What it was not was, oh my God, if I put this out here, even though I'm feeling this and I want to do this, so I put this out here, I'm afraid of how many followers I might lose. I'm
Mhm.
afraid of what people in my social circle might think about me. I'm afraid of what my wife's going to say if I'm putting that stuff out there. And I'm not saying those aren't valid concerns or things to weigh, But too much of what we do in terms of editing ourselves is an automatic response. We learned that this is not okay, that is not okay. This makes friends, this doesn't make friends, this makes a fool out of me, this doesn't make a fool out of me. And so a lot of people spend their entire life with that internal programming. And so what they're doing is they're constantly other referencing, what I would call other referencing. What is Derrick going to think? What are the followers going to think? What is my wife going to think? What is the church community going to think? How am I going to look? What's going to happen to my reputation? So see all that stuff. I'm referencing other people, which requires that I do something that we look at in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is called mind reading. It's one of the cognitive distortions that I can mind read you and your reaction. And so if I put this out there, what is Derrick going to think? I automatically have to read your mind. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I'm editing myself to try to once you see yourself doing that, once you understand that pattern, that process, it seems ridiculous. But when you're stuck in that mode of operating in your life, then you end up editing parts of yourself, and not always the negative parts. I've worked with people, we talked about this a little bit before we came on camera, but I've worked with people who were really smart. They were a cut above everybody else, and they got made fun of for it in school and whatever. And so they didn't want to be made fun of. So they learned to tap down their potential. They learned to tap down their excellence and not let their excellence be seen by other people because of the cost. And so again, you're editing even your own potential and excellence, which again goes back to why you cannot operate in the fullness of the law of attraction if you're not 100% yourself.
Yep. And what's funny about that is that people will go through this self-editing. And have you ever like looked at a book, where I've actually helped people edit books, and I had to be careful in editing because you can edit so much to where the original intent or the spirit of the book is lost.
Oh, that's good.
And
that's really good.
so, yep. And so when we get in this process of self-editing, right? We edit ourselves to something to the point where we're not even ourselves. We're a shell of ourselves, or we're something that's totally different than ourselves. And then we wonder why. Why am I not experiencing the kind of relationships that I want to experience? Why don't I have the career or the business that I want? Why don't I have the money or the wealth that I want? And all of these things. And honestly, the law of attraction cannot work for you if you're not authentic, because again, going back to my illustration of the mock-ups in the GM building, people come and look at that and they say, well, that's neat, but let me know when it's running. Let me know when it's actually doing something. And that is the key. And we can only perform. Let me say this. Okay, you can perform in inauthenticity. You can. It's simply not sustainable.
Right.
You can't keep it up. Nobody has the emotional, spiritual, or intellectual stamina, because those are the parts. The physical stamina is not a big part of that, but those non-physical energy centers, you don't have that capability to sustain that over a long period of time. At some point, the true you is going to spill out. And if you haven't dealt with that, and let me say this very clearly, if you haven't dealt with that and gotten to the point where you have found yourself and like yourself, because I believe also that the law of attraction only works when you like yourself.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. Let me rephrase that just a little bit. Let me nuance that a little bit. Because the law of attraction will work for you if you're not, if you don't like yourself, but you'll find things that you don't like. And you'll find people that don't like you, and you'll find situations that are not good for you. All of that, you'll attract that. But if you want to invoke the law of attraction in a positive manner in order to attract those things that are good, pleasing, and positive, edifying to you, then you have to be in a posture of self-like.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So the other part of this, when we're talking about, being yourself 100%, being 100% yourself, we're talking about communication.
Mm,
You touched on it earlier, Derrick, but how do you communicate? And see, this is this is an art and a science. This is a skill. This is not something. I mean, some people are born better communicators, sure, more naturally competent with that or smart with that or whatever, but still communicating yourself and who you are, sharing who you are with the world is a skill. And so I just looked it up, but the word communication comes from the word common.
mm,
The word communion, commune, all comes from common, having something in common. And so, what are we really doing if we're not communicating who we are? I mean, what's the point? What's the point of just going through and communicating falsely about who we are, what we think, what we feel? So in other words, there's a way to communicate and express anger, even in an intimate relationship, where
mhm.
you're not attacking the other person, and you're owning yourself. And like
Right.
most of the times, like listen to the difference in these statements. You made me so angry versus I'm feeling very angry right now.
Yeah. Huge.
You made me jealous when I don't know, whatever, talk to that guy, girl, whatever. This goes on. You can tell I counsel a lot of college students. Like, in other words, and I tell people this too when they fall in love, like that first love sort of new energy that you get, um, and then that person breaks their heart, and so then they tend to think, well, nobody's ever going to come along that's going to meet that need again. And I try to always bring it back to the person. Like those feelings of excitement, those feelings of love, all that stuff that you were feeling was not coming from that other person. It was coming from you. Now it was your response to that other person, but you were
Mhm.
generating those feelings. Those feelings were coming from within you.
Right.
So you can remove the object
Mm,
out there and own what's going on in here. So, for example, I'm angry at, uh, this person, and maybe then I'm angry at this person. I'm angry at this person because talking about that angry person, that it's a way
yeah.
of life for them, right? No, own it as you're angry. Nobody else
Yeah.
caused it. You're angry. You're owning it. And that's part of effective communication. But again,
Communication.
if you're not communicating who you are, then what's the point? You know,
Yeah.
like what is the point to communicating a false idea of you? So that's the first thing I would say. And then the second thing I would say is that people don't feel comfortable communicating who they are because they've had past experiences where they were shamed, right back to the garden,
Yep.
where they were shamed for communicating
Mm,
who they were. And this leads then to all kinds of negative self-talk. This leads to all kinds of sort of talking yourself out of stuff, right?
yep. Yep.
And so I lost my train of thought.
No, talking yourself out of things. Like you're instead of it's the exact opposite of trying to manifest things by speaking them into being.
Yeah,
Right. You speak the opposite, and basically things that you are trying to assemble or amass or aggregate in your life, instead you're disassembling them, you're tearing them down through negative self-talk.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I remember now what I was going to say. Thanks for filling in the gap there for me.
No, no, no
The
problem, man.
airtime for
That's
me.
what we do, man.
So what that generates then is a negative sense of what, again, psychologists use self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is just your
Mm,
belief in your own ability to be effective. And so what we tend to do is we look at consequences that we might face in life if we do certain things. And then we create a scenario in our head. Now we're into another cognitive error, which is fortune telling.
mm.
If I do this, I'm predicting a future. And then the negative self-talk and the negative shame-based beliefs undergird this loss of faith in your own ability to deal with whatever circumstances that might create. So in other words, I knew I couldn't, like, if I stayed a pastor and kept preaching what I was preaching, I'm being hypocritical. And that has consequences. If I come out of the closet, so to speak, spiritually, and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is my where I've arrived, my point of view now has changed and shifted, then I knew I probably am going to have to find a new social circle, probably going to have to make new friends, probably going to have to find a different way to make the money I was making before. But I had the self-efficacy to say, I can do that. So I can choose to make friends. All that to say this, I can choose to make friends with people who will love a phony version of me.
Mhm.
Or I can choose to be authentic and make friends and find people who will love an authentic version of me. And that's really the choice that we're looking at.
I'm gonna pick on two people, and I'm actually gonna call them out by name. One might be hearing this, the other one definitely isn't. But they're my two oldest friends, Leon Mims and Inman Dexter. Um, and Inman is 2 years older than Leon and I. Leon and I are like 3 weeks apart, um, age wise. Um, but we've known each other now 58 years. And one of the things that I can say that in 58 years, all three of us have changed a lot. All of us have gone through different iterations of ourselves. And honestly, this doesn't speak to inauthenticity. If you're not growing, you're dead.
Right.
Simple as that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you can't get mad at people for changing, because change is a product of growth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the reason why we have been friends all this time, and they have been with me through the best times in my life, and they've been with me in the worst times in my life, and I've likewise been with them in the same way, because we made a decision as young children that we were going to be real with each other no matter what, and that no matter what changes we endured, as long as those changes, because see, here's the other thing too, is that because we made and this is an unspoken pact. It wasn't something like we just, you know, cut our fingers and did blood brothers kind of thing, and we made this pact. No, it wasn't anything like that. But if any one of us is going down a path that doesn't seem like it's a logical or reasonable progression of ourselves, the others will call the other out. Because you have to have people that, number one, know you, KNOW you, and people that know you, NO you, right?
Yeah.
They'll say, "Oh, dog, stop. That no, that ain't you." Right?
Yeah.
And you have to have that. So in those two guys, I have that. What am I saying? Is that you have to and you have to put yourself in the position of people who you are willing to be vulnerable with, who you're willing to expose these deep dark recesses of yourself with, and that these others will likewise reciprocate. Because here's the other thing too, is that um let me say this: you cannot be authentic with fake people,
Right.
right? And that's a problem that a lot of us get into, is that, like you were saying, we edit ourselves. We'll try to edit ourselves to fit in, try to edit ourselves to be part of this crew or this clique. But in editing ourselves, we're not, we're being inauthentic, and therefore we're attracting inauthenticity. But it's like, if you're authentic and you're trying to edit yourself to be around fake people, what you're going to do is you're going to create a facade of yourself. Basically, you're going to make a mannequin of yourself that's displayed to the world, right? And
Yep.
that's one of the things that we have to really be careful of, that you know real begets real, real attracts real, uh, and real repels fake. And here's the other thing, is that when you are authentic, when you're true to yourself, what'll happen is that if you are faithfully true to yourself, in other words, you are unyieldingly true to yourself, you will expose any fakes that try to show up in your life.
Hmm.
And what'll happen is you'll begin to, how can I say it, you'll begin to pick your friends without even trying.
Yep. So the more I think about this, again, growing in real time, right? The more we talk about this, the more I think about this. This really does come down to issues of self-esteem.
Hmm.
Esteem comes from the word estimate.
Mm. Yeah.
What's your estimation? What's your self-estimation? Right.
Yep.
And
Self-valuation.
yeah, and so part of what's so cool about this is you can let other people, once you respect, okay, let me say it this way. I'm going to say it this way. If you don't respect your own autonomy, you'll never respect the autonomy of others.
Mm. Dude.
And which
Say
is
that one
why,
more time. Say
yeah,
that one more time.
if you don't respect and hold with honor your own autonomy as a human being, as a consciousness,
Mm.
you will never be able to respect or uphold the autonomy of other people. Because you can't give what you've never had. You can't give what you haven't given to yourself first, right?
Yep.
This is where Carl Jung's ideas of projection and all that stuff comes out of. So by holding fast to my autonomy through proper self-estimation or through healthy self-estimation, then I can let you hold fast to your autonomy. So for example, having friends in your life that know you, KNOW, and friends that know you, I'm no longer afraid of that kind of feedback. In fact, I
Mm.
want that kind of feedback. I tell
Yeah.
people work all the time. We had somebody that worked with us that quit the job 2 years ago, and they still talk about how miserable this person made everybody in the office. And I have told everybody in the office, I said, if I ever become that guy, I want you to sit down with me and have an intervention, because I do not want to be the person that everybody's talking about
Yeah.
2 years after I've left. So if I ever start down that road, you have my permission to sit down with me. And I communicate it just like this, Derrick. You have my permission to sit down with me and say, Aaron, you remember when you said you gave us permission to tell you were being an asshole? And that's exactly how I communicate it.
Yep.
I say, I want you to feel free to give me that feedback. I can't be afraid of someone else's response. I can't be afraid if I'm vulnerable, if I open up something and you don't like it, Derrick, or you have a differing opinion or a differing idea about it. But I also don't have to crumble, like because if I'm so worried about what you think that I cannot handle your own authenticity,
Hmm.
your own, Aaron, that's ridiculous, or no, dude, what the hell are
Yeah.
you thinking? Or if I can't handle your authenticity, then it's a lack of self-estimation. It's I'm esteeming you above
Less.
myself,
Well, yeah.
in the sense, right, that, oh my God, Derrick said I was wrong. Now all my self-esteem issues, oh my God, maybe I am wrong. All my trauma, all that stuff can get triggered. But if I can stay in a right, healthy estimation of myself, then we can have a different discussion.
Yeah.
We can discuss about maybe what's right for you, what's right for me. I can delve deeper. I can open up more fully. I can acknowledge, dang, Derrick, I didn't think about that before. I'm really glad you brought that to my attention, without getting defensive, because I don't have all those layers of negative self-talk and I'm not trying to impress you.
Yep.
So that opens up for more communication, communion, commonness. And it sounds like that's what you have with your friends.
Yeah. And here's the thing, you know, like, this is the thing where people get concerned or afraid of vulnerability, right? Because when you make yourself vulnerable, you kind of expose a flank, right? In a military standpoint, you expose a weakness, right?
Yep.
And what happens is that there are people that will try to exploit your vulnerability. And this is how religion operates, because religion will exploit that vulnerability and use it as a tool of conformity, right? That basically that they will try to impress the mold of their way of thinking, of their way of believing, of their way of behaving upon you. Because you know, to be different is to be sinful, right? So in other words, we need to take, you know, you expose that vulnerability. um, I have concerns about my intellect, or I have concerns about my body, or I have concerns about my ethnicity, or my hair, or my weight, or whatever it is, right? And so religion will come in and will exploit that vulnerability. And this is like, in the whole software business, there was this big thing recently. It was called the Log4j. And it was a vulnerability that impacted virtually every system that had some flavor of Java installed on it. Now, what systems have Java on them? The better question is, what systems don't have Java
Right.
on them, right? So this was a broad vulnerability that hackers were able to exploit. And in doing that, they were able to take control over company systems, over HR and payroll, a lot of different areas. So this was a huge thing. It was a big thing, and so we were engaged in mitigating these vulnerabilities all over the place. What am I saying is that, you know, just the mere fact that you are breathing means that there are going to be vulnerabilities that you have, that you expose to the world. You cannot protect yourself against every vulnerability, but what you can do is you can make sure that you are in an environment with people who are less likely. You can never say will not or never will, but less likely to exploit those vulnerabilities, that are less likely to try to get you to conform to their standard, that are more likely to allow your autonomy, Aaron, to your point. Because that's the whole thing, is that um, when you are autonomous, you are a free moral agent, you are a free intellectual agent, you are a free emotional agent, that you give yourself the license to express and to experience the full range of your emotional portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
and
I love that.
and yeah.
I love that. Express the full range of your emotional portfolio. I love how you said that.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think as I'm listening to you talk, then I'm thinking it's important to your authenticity to be selective about who you give that kind of access to yourself. Because let's be honest, would you go around lying and pretending and faking so that you're 50% yourself and 50% of the time you're not, 70% of the time you're yourself, 30% of the time you're not? But you have to maintain that 50% of faking or 30% of faking or whatever it is
Mhm.
in order to protect your vulnerabilities from the people you've allowed in your life. The
Mm.
problem is not your vulnerability. And the problem really isn't your lying. The problem is that you keep tolerating and accepting those kind of people and giving them access to you. So So you're going to go around being 50% of yourself with people who can't handle your vulnerabilities, rather than removing yourself completely from those situations to try and find people that can handle your vulnerabilities. So, and then you can be 100% authentic. Then you don't have all this work, and so you can be 100% authentic. Like, I know I can be 100% authentic with you, Derrick. I know I can tell you anything
Likewise.
I want to tell you, and I know that you're not going to weaponize that or in any
Right.
way try to use that for your own gain or against me. That's not true of the church people I was around. Not at all true of the church people I was around. Wasn't true of, pastors I was around that was jealous. If I had a problem, guarantee you another pastor would be the last person on earth I would go to. When I was in ministry, if I had a problem, or a church member, whatever. So you have to start asking yourself about your relationships, and is it worth it to be 50% of myself, but to have these people in my life when they really don't love me,
Right.
they really don't have my back, they really don't accept me, but it's the best I can do, I guess. So again, we're back to self-estimation. It's the best I can do. I can't get what I really want, and this is better than nothing. So I'm going to settle for less when really the potential is there for me to have more.
Yep. And like social climbing, the desire for social status, the desire for self-importance, right? A lot of times that'll drive us into some very dark areas, because what happens is that now we, to try to um, exaggerate our own importance, our own value, that we try to associate with people that we think are above our social class. And so what happens is that we pretend in order to fit in, right? And that's a pitfall, because again, when you're 100% authentic, you're not going to attract people that are attracted to inauthenticity. You're going to attract authentic people. It's like how do we say it in the hood? It's like real knows real, right? So if you're and let me say this, right? Like, if you think of yourself as like a radio device, and a very good example of this is your cell phone, right? Your good old iPhone, right? Every iPhone is mechanically identical. There's no difference between, I mean, like, if it's an iPhone 13 Pro, every iPhone 13 Pro is exactly the same thing. But your phone has a number that only you can be reached at. And that when you call out, everybody knows that it's you who's calling, right? so
Right.
so so we are all like, you know mechanically similar under the hood,
That's great.
but the hardware is the same, but our software is different.
I love
Or
that.
like the key to the remote for your car, right? It's like every Honda CRV is the same, but everyone has a different remote that only opens that one, the one that you own, right? So there, we have to remember that we broadcast something. Um, we are signal transceivers, right? We send out a signal and we also receive signals,
Right.
but we can only send out one signal, right? If we're and let me say this, God, so many fucking metaphors here. Um, a radio station gets a license to operate on a particular frequency,
Right.
right? That radio station can also go to a different frequency. It has the capability to go to a different frequency, but they don't have a license to go to another frequency. They must, when they obtain their license, they must broadcast on the frequency that they applied and were approved for, because otherwise they are broadcasting what is known as a clandestine signal, And this was a big thing. Like in the 70s, you have what they call pirate radio stations,
Yeah.
that basically some pirate would set up a high power transmitter close to a radio tower, that when it went into low power mode, it would steal their signal
I
and
remember that.
broadcast all kinds of crazy
Mhm.
stuff, right? From indie rock to to conspiracy theories, and it was all kinds of stuff. So we have to say, okay, I need to know, what is my frequency. What is the frequency that I'm broadcasting on? And that that the people see, and then this is how radio advertising is sold. Basically, you contract with a advertiser, and you sign affidavits saying that you broadcasted these spots at a. I know you've been in radio, so you know all of this, but
Mhm.
that you run these spots, and you basically agree that, hey, I'm running these spots at this time, and I'm signing off on it. And at any time, they can have an auditor who's listening to your radio station on that frequency at that time, and they say, are you running the spots, right? So in other words, are you authentically running our content as we've contractually agreed? So
Mm.
we have to put out the
Dude.
the right
So,
signal,
so
and then we have to be around people who are contracted through personal contract, through communication, right, to receive that signal and to consume that content. Okay, I'm gonna shut up there.
so so let's presuppose, well, because this is the segment where we kick religion in the nuts.
Woohoo!
At least I'm gonna. But let's presuppose a anti-religious but metaphysical universe, metaphysical reality. Let's
Mhm.
presuppose life before this life and life after this life, or that there is something, whatever a person believes. I'm not being dogmatic here, but you're talking about this. This is where my mind is going. Like, you're authorized to broadcast this content on this radio frequency. What if there are those kind of agreements somewhere, metaphysically or something in the universe where, and I'm not talking about something
Oh,
that's bondage, but I'm just saying where you come in with a certain frequency, you come in with a
mhm.
certain, we used to call it destiny code back when I was preaching,
Yeah.
and you choose to live an inauthentic life, then what's happening is this life is not going to work for you,
No.
because you're not able to broadcast. So the world is not, you're out of sync. And I think that's one of the ways we can recognize that we are not being 100% ourselves, that we're not being authentic,
Nice.
is because everything feels out of sync. And that's where I was when I started deconstructing. I was like, everything on the outside, this is everything I thought I wanted, but I feel so out of sync. I feel so out of step. I feel so disconnected within. And I had to explore that, start exploring, what is this out of syncness? What is this stuff that I'm feeling within? Why am I not satisfied? Why am I not happy? And let go of the religious bullshit. Now, here's where we get to kicking religion in the nuts, because religious bullshit gets in the way. I mean, if the tree of the knowledge of good and evil means anything, and I'm not saying it does, again, I'm just giving my own spin on this stuff. But if it means anything, it's religion itself. Because let's think about the monster God of the Bible. Let's think about I'm going to say that again, the monster God of the Bible, the monster God of my evangelical and Pentecostal faith could not handle my vulnerabilities. I could not be vulnerable with that God, because to be vulnerable with that God is to be judged by that God.
Hmm.
So I couldn't come to God with my anger. I couldn't come to God with my hate or my jealousy or my lust, unless it was, oh God, forgive me. Oh, my heart is sinful. Within me there dwells no good thing. Please change me. Cleanse my heart, oh Lord. All that stuff that we did. And so think about that, man.
Yep.
If your creator, if you believe in this, if your creator is incapable of tolerating and handling your humanity, then what the fuck are we doing? So one of the biggest
Yep.
obstacles that has to get removed is this religious idea that I can't have shortcomings. I can't have areas that I need to grow. I can't have certain weaknesses, and I certainly can't expose those. How could you expose those to this God that says they're completely unavailable for you and inappropriate for you and wrong and evil, and you're aligned with darkness, and you're aligned with the devil, and you're aligned with the evil one, and you're aligned with the world, you're aligned with the sin nature inside of you? I mean, and then the funniest part of all of it is at the end of the book it says that all liars have their part in the lake of
In the
fire.
lake of fire. Yep.
So, but the God that created that system produces a liar in you.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to lie to cope.
Yeah, you lie to
But
yourself, you lie to your friends, you lie to God. It's horrible. It's horrible.
and let me just say this while you're there, because this is you said this. Religion creates liars because
Yeah,
if you think about it, you know, like you have to be a certain way, you have to subdue certain feelings, you have to subordinate certain actions and all of this other stuff to try to conform, to try to be the good Christian, right? To be saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost, right? That all of these things, and what happens is, in order for you to obtain the fellowship, maintain the facade, and sustain your spirituality, you've got to lie. You've got to lie like a motherfucker in order in order to make this all work. And I'll tell you something, man. It's like going back to the original premise of this thing, where you were talking about the seafood that said, that the law of attraction is bullshit. If your if your chi is not authentic, and that chi, that is your life force. That's literally what chi is. And so if your life force, that is your energy, is broadcasting on the wrong frequency, how can you possibly receive anything on that frequency? You can't.
right. Yeah, and the other thing religion, just from my own experience with it, the other thing that religion does is it it'll make you stay in situations that aren't right for you, that aren't comfortable for you. Like, God's not concerned about your happiness. He's just concerned about you glorifying God. God's not concerned about your success. God's just concerned about your faithfulness. And you'll stay in these situations under the guise of, this is refining you, this is building your character. And I can honestly say that's not building your character. That's
No.
destroying your character. It's tearing down your character, because it's preventing you from making changes that you want to make within yourself. And if you can't make changes within yourself, you cannot make changes within the world. So therefore, you cannot make any kind of a law of attraction work, because the beginning part of the law of attraction is making change within yourself. When you can make change within yourself, then you can make change within the world. But if that change is off limits to you because you're performing the will of God by staying in a profession you don't want to, or a relationship you don't want to, or I don't know, what other kind of stupid shit does religion try to box you into? A church that you don't want to, relationships with people, well, God's just teaching me to be more loving. Or, I mean, you really, if you come out of that, you have to dump all that stuff and realize how toxic a lot of that stuff is.
Yep. And I'll tell you something is I think that religion is the biggest enemy of self
Yeah.
that mankind has ever devised. People talk about politics and all. No, I really think that, honestly, I think that politics, as we understand it, is not possible without religion. I think
Yep.
religion facilitates that, greases the skids for it, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I could go on and on, but this has been like a really, 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 really awesome subject. I mean, it's like, you talk about growing in real time, and let's see who else is growing in real time tonight. Let's look at the chat because I think I saw some really
Yeah,
cool
there's
stuff.
some. I did too.
I'll
I
tell you what,
like
you
that.
pick one and you run.
I like this from Abby Stewart. Says it's a ripple effect too. Being someone else to impress so and so, you take on interests or pursuits that aren't your own. For some people, this can worsen to the point where you're like, "Who the fuck am I?" Yes, it can absolutely. And making decisions, even small ones, feels nerve wracking. So you become void. And this is considered good because then God can come in and make you like Him, whatever that
Mm,
is.
yeah,
That's a really great comment. I love that.
yeah. I want to be like God. Every time I hear that now, I cringe. It was like, oh, we have the song, oh, I want to be like Jesus in my heart, and and you think about this, and you're like, okay, everything that's good about me, everything that's awesome about me, everything that I have struggled to build or to, to learn, I suddenly have to, put that away and try to be like this mythical guy. um it's crazy. And Kendra Bell says this sounds like why humans are so obsessed with going back to sleep slash into the matrix once they've been woken up. They thought that the awareness slash light would cast out the shadow when really it casts it for us to see, and once you see it you can no longer ignore it. I always say that once you see it you can't unsee it, and this awareness means work.
It's true. So true. She also says, that was Kendra, right?
Yep.
And she also says, this sounds like people struggle to be authentic because they've spent so long not being so. Then they believe the quote unquote sunk cost fallacy. I
Mm.
spent so long on building it. If I'm authentic, I'll lose it all. It's not a loss slash sunk cost. It's an exchange. Yep. Yep.
You know what, one day we're going to have to do a show on logical fallacy, but that sunk cost
Yep.
fallacy, that's there are so many people that say I've devoted so much of my life. Let me say this, I'm going to say this, and I'm not going to say any names um in this particular case, but there are pastors, church leaders out here
Mm-hmm.
that are struggling with their faith right now.
Yep.
They're struggling with it, but they have invested years in
Yep.
education, training, conferences, ordination, consecration. They have devoted so much of their life to this that they there's nowhere else to go. And
Yep.
so that sunk cost fallacy is huge,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, we still need to do that. We've talked about that a lot, doing a show on
Yeah.
like fallacies. So
I,
Ben Urban says the masks we wear are the crosses we bear.
Damn, that's a t-shirt, man.
Yeah, it is. Sure is.
That is a t-shirt. Marianne Jenke says, my beef with the church isn't finished. I've only taken a break. And then Kendra says, you're not angry. You are angry, not anger. So that kind of flips what I was saying, but it works. It works. I will work with that. Um, Someone here from Turning Moments into Memory says, exactly. I lost most of my friends. I'm going to tell you something. Once you've decided to be real with yourself, you can expect a whole bunch of people to fall off your,
Yeah.
because there are so many people out here that are pretending at some level or another, and they're expecting you to play in that reindeer game. And when you decide that you don't want to or not going to anymore, um, you you fall off.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ben Urban says exclusive religion does not simply dull heads and desensitize hearts, but it also steals away individuality and self-expression.
Yep. Sure does.
Let's see. Kendra's got another one here. This is a good one. It's like if you're a weightlifter and you want to increase gains, but you're so obsessed with looking good as you exercise, if you're focused on two things, lifting weights and looking good doing it, you split your energy and attract anything that comes with that. God damn, that's good.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah. Kendra, you're on fire. You need to sit
Yeah,
down and write a book.
for sure.
Yeah. Abby says, it's always been my biggest hesitation on social media more than anything. I want to unfriend church people, but I feel bad doing it. Abby, let me just say real quick, I don't. I don't. I almost make sport out of it, but that's another thing. I want to feel peace, but I feel I owe them something. I don't. I don't owe anybody a goddamn thing. Nobody. And I'm gonna tell you something. I love Aaron Tomlinson, and I don't owe him anything. Aaron doesn't owe me anything. But anyway,
Right.
let me keep going here. But I feel like I owe them something. My loyalty and my faithfulness, as if being me is an act of rebellion. I need to hide. God, that is almost a crystallization of what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is in a way. It is an act of rebellion because you're rebelling against that system. That, I mean, honestly, I can't remember who you said made that comment, but if if you'll explore where that's coming from inside of you, you'll probably realize that a lot of that fidelity, loyalty, I feel bad for doing this, is the programming itself that they put inside of you to keep you under control.
Yeah, Abby, you're on fire tonight too. She says it's a ripple effect too. Being someone else to impress so and so. Is that the one
Yeah,
you read? Okay,
that's
I'm,
the one
I'm
I
not
read.
gonna.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
I'm
good
not gonna
stuff.
reread it because I just
Yeah,
saw
that's
that.
so good. We want to give it a second shout out.
Yeah, yeah. And Taryn Jerome Harris says he's replying to Ben Urban. He says I'm enjoying this discussion tonight too. It's real good. And Taryn says people who say fuck, I'm going to hell. Taryn, I'm going to hell in every fucking religion known to man. If there's a religion out there, there is a special place in hell for me, for me in each and every one of them. I have a throne in the hell of every religion.
Such blasphemy, Derrick.
I know. I know. I don't give a fuck. My Chris Tucker voice. Yeah, Carrie Upchurch says divine deadbeat dad, narcissistic breadcrumb and love bombing guys. Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, don't forget the abusive part though.
Yeah,
Don't forget the
absolutely.
controlling, obsessive controlling. If you don't love me, I'm gonna beat you part.
Yeah. Ben Urban says we're marketing reps and God is our supervisor who steals the spotlight. Fuck that asshole. every Christian that reads that is going to blow a fuse, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, but good stuff here tonight. I didn't put the you got time. I'm gonna if you got time, I'm gonna put the link out here if anybody wants
Sure.
to join in.
Sure.
Uh, so let's see if so we were trying to get Taryn Jerome Harris out here, but he wasn't able to log on. Hang on for a second. Uh, yeah, I'm ordering Wingstop for the family too. As I'm
Yeah, I need to do that too. I'm not filling in very well for you here. I do want to say this. Lots of times we people don't or aren't able to have a good healthy estimation of themselves, or they're not able to authentically 100% be themselves because of unresolved childhood traumas. Almost always it goes back to childhood. I mean, there's adult traumas as well, but our patterns and way of thinking and way of being is pretty much set by the time we're adults. And so we would respond differently in those situations if it wasn't for childhood trauma. And you have to unpack some of that.
yep.
There's a million different ways to unpack that. So I would just recommend, if you find yourself in a situation where you're terrified to leave a relationship, or the thought of being 100% yourself, your first thought is, oh my God, what would they think? And what's going to happen to me? Then I would encourage you to just start researching childhood trauma and how it affects and impacts you as an adult. Find a good trauma informed therapist if you can find one in your area, or just a good friend, or doing some journaling. I mean, there's a million different ways to heal from this stuff. But I would invite you to recognize that the problem is probably rooted somewhere in your childhood traumas.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm putting this link out here in case anybody wants to hop on, join in.
May have no takers tonight. We may have people that want to, but can't seem to log on. That seems to be a problem sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that when you start dealing with older browsers and older hardware, I think that's a challenge. And
for sure,
and I'll tell you what, if I were God, I would give all of you guys MacBook Pros. Everybody, MacBook Pros for everybody. See, I'm better than God just for that.
For sure. All right, man.
All right. Well, I guess that's it, man.
Stop, and I'm gonna go figure my stuff out here.
Yeah. Feed the youngins. That's the thing. Gotta feed these hungry people. Keep them all happy, so that you don't have armed rebellion in your house.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. I'm going to read something Kendra wrote in party. She says, "I'm gonna be authentic nerdy for me for a sec. I needed this talk. Funny enough, both for me and my Dungeon and Dragons character gonna be playing in an hour. She has a childhood similar to that of the Umbrella Academy kids / Black Widow. Lots of gaslighting and control. She definitely struggles with God's anger and authenticity. Greco-Roman gladiator barbarian." I love it, Kendra.
Yeah, that's great, Kendra. Thanks for geeking out with us.
Yep, appreciate it.
I nerd out all the time. I love people's inner nerd, man. It's the best.
Dude, me too.
That's best.
Yep. So, Aaron, thank you again. Thank you all for watching, and do your closing, man.
Peace and hair grease and chicken grease and peace and grace and all that good stuff. We're out.
Later, y'all.